Okay, we're back. We're live. We're truly, yes, we are live. And we're here on Wednesday, and everybody knows what Wednesday means. And Wednesday is Hawaii, the state of clean energy. You have to associate that. If you get up in the morning on Wednesday, think energy. You know, actually, you could think energy other days, but especially on Wednesday. Okay, and today here on Think Tech Talks, we have our special co-host, Sharon Moriwaki. We don't always have her, but we have her now. We roped her in, and here, say hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Thank you, Sharon.
Aloha.
Sharon is the co-chair of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and hopefully sometime today she can talk about Hawaii Clean Energy Day, which she's been planning. Okay, and then we also have as our principal guest, Caitlin Pomerantz, who is with the Sierra Club. Just a word, well, say hi.
Aloha, everybody.
That's Caitlin Pomerantz. Now, we know you.
Yeah.
Because you came to our legislative briefing on or about January 15th in lieu of Robert Harris. Remember him?
I do.
Yeah. He runs the Sierra Club. Or he has run it. Has he stepped down or what?
He's on a leave of absence currently.
Leave of absence, so he can run for office in Kailua.
Kaneohe.
Kaneohe. Okay, I knew it was out there somewhere. Okay, and does that leave you behind?
It leaves me with a big job and an exciting job to do. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you came and spoke for the Sierra Club in the legislative briefing on January 15th, I thought it was fabulous.
Oh, thank
I said, who is that person? That's what I said. And then I went, I don't know if he told you, I wrote to Robert Harris. I mean, sua sponte, I wrote to Robert Harris, and I said, Robert, wow, you got a good one here. This is terrific. You were terrific that day.
Thank you.
So we expect nothing less today.
That's what happens when you set the bar too high.
You know, Caitlin has this kind of poetry in the way she speaks. You'll see what I mean. Okay. But let's start with exactly who you are, Caitlin. You know, I do this to people, and they always go, no, tell us who you are.
In the existential sense. Or
Yeah, exactly. Define yourself.
Right. I guess I think of myself as an activist and an advocate. I'm really, I think I was most attracted to this job because I really believe, I've had the opportunity to focus specifically on clean energy and really zero in on that. It's been, a really great opportunity, and I was really attracted to that because I really think that ultimately our greatest source of energy comes from within. It comes from our caring and our love of the land, of each other, and of creating a balance in our relationships. And that's, I think, what drives most people to come, to take action for the environment is an experience that they've had in nature, often in our childhood. We're so impressionable, and it leaves, beauty really touches us much more directly, and so we call on that experience when life gets crazy and we start to, we get into the real world and we start to see, oh my God, how things work and how they don't work. And, we're often trying to bring some of that balance and that harmony and that beauty that we experienced as children, and hopefully still experience and still find the time to get outdoors. And so for me, my motivation comes in a lot of ways from translating the experiences that I've had in nature and inspiring people to take action and to come together to form relationships between each other and try to strengthen the relationships in society and in the policy sector in a way that brings harmony to our community. And this has been a really great opportunity to do that.
Yeah. God, I mean, I have reactions to what you say. I think of those, I think of the days in the 40s and the 50s, or maybe the 30s too, of some kids in a small town in middle America, and they're walking down a railroad track, and there hasn't been a train on this track in like years. And they're in small town, rural America, relating to the environment. One of them has a live frog in his pocket, and they're relating to the environment, and they're feeling it. It is their life. They live in it completely. Mm-hmm. And then I say to myself, wait a minute, there are no railroad tracks in Hawaii. There are not a lot of frogs either, not good frogs anyway. There used to be a lot of hiking and trail and mountain club and Sierra Club hikes around. but mostly the kids in Hawaii, and you're going to help me with this now. Mostly the kids in Hawaii, they go to school, they compete in whatever ways, sports, otherwise. They do a lot of computer stuff, a lot of television, too much eating, and all this stuff. And they do not get out on the very trails that you guys have maintained over the and cared for over the years. And the same with the Trail and Mountain Club. I think if you did tell me if I'm wrong, if you did a survey of how many people are walking the land, touching the land, embracing the mountains and the sky now on all islands, not just here, as opposed to, say, at the time of statehood or even before statehood. I'm one of those guys, I liked it before statehood. Okay? You would find far fewer kids are out there. They're busy, they got things to do, they got places to go. And so it's hard for me to see the purity of passion to protect the land when a whole generation, or more than one generation, has, you mind if I say this? I mean, I really feel this. More than one generation has lost touch with the land. You say to a kid, he's telling you about sustainability and what he learned in school, and you say, when's the last time you went on the top of a mountain? And he says, I never did. What are we missing?
I think that's true, but I think there's so many remedies to that. Kids are never going to lose their passion to get outside and to experience nature. We just need to work harder to create opportunities for that to happen. And that's always been the impetus for the work. That's really the foundation of the work that Sierra Club has done. That's a big part of why it was founded. 100+ years ago, John Muir was so inspired, and the environment had touched him so deeply. That he wanted to create opportunities to bring other people out and to experience that. And we've continued that, especially for kids with our high school hikers program. But you can never do too much. There's always more to do in that arena. And I think we are blessed in Hawaii because we're so immersed in our environment. It's hard.
Well, we have to actually get out and touch it. The reason I think about this, the reason I say this today is I just finished editing a movie and submitting a movie to OC16 about my trip in West Hawaii to what they call the West Hawaii Complex Area Schools. And it's different because they have a lot of educational issues in West Hawaii. And I had a tour around there, and there was a principal in Kohala Elementary School. It was a memorable guy, Hawaiian guy. His name is Danny Garcia. And at the close, which I left in the movie, if you care to see the movie, he says, it's really important that we have these kids study, but kids have got to get outdoors. And that's really the most Pono thing of all, is that when they go outdoors, and we are not going to provide, we are going to give them that experience. It's their experience with the outdoors that builds them as people. So I think we have to do more of that. But that's just my comment, not necessarily.
I
do more with hiking trails for the kids, or what other programs do you have for getting kids outdoors and doing more for the environment?
Yeah, there are service trip programs, and there's also we have extended trips where people really have the opportunity to to travel. We have beach cleanups and things locally, but there's also opportunities to travel and really do an extended project that I think really has the deepest impact in terms of coming to a place and seeing whatever transformation you're able to affect over 3 or 4 days. And so definitely want to put a plug for that out there.
Okay, we'll have many plugs. Sharon's winding up for her big plug on Clean Energy Day. Okay, but let's move on to the whole thing about the system, the electrical system, the utility, the grid as it is. We have arrived at a certain place in the continuum, and I think we always have to keep it in mind as a continuum. We started in one place and we're going to end up in another. We know where we started, but we don't know where we're going to end. So in terms of modernizing the grid, this is not an easy question. I never promised you a rose garden. In terms of modernizing the grid and doing smart grid equipment, whatever that may in fact be, where are we now? How smart are we? How modern are we, or unmodern? give us a snapshot of conceptually of where we are now on the grid.
Sure. Well, there are certain pilot projects. For example, on Maui, I know there's
Hitachi.
Right. Yeah. And there have been various. I think Hawaii's always been a testing ground for clean energy initiatives. But what we're really running up against is the need for a systems-wide transformation, and that is.
Okay, so we're same old. Is what we are.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made steps.
Yeah. There's no denying we have certainly made progress.
In the last, what would you say in the last 2 or 3 years? I mean, because we started talking about smart grid, whatever that means, at least 3-4 years ago, and see in the paper from time to time some piece of equipment that was a smart grid, and hear about these interactive electronic devices that tell the utility what you're using and help everybody come together. But we have some modernization already, but you say we're in a transformation now.
Yeah, well, we've reached a really critical juncture where essentially costs have come down to the extent that
of equipment.
Or the costs of PV, for instance, have come down to the point where it's cost competitive for in comparison to conventional electricity, fossil fuel fired electricity, and that's that's caused an incredible people call it an explosion or a success, however you see it, of rooftop solar installations. Since 2006, we've seen a doubling, I think, every year. And that really has to do, simply with economics, the fact that it's now more affordable and more accessible to people. And we've run up against, either we can, there's some controversy as to whether we've actually reached a limit or whether, those estimations are too conservative. But I think everyone can agree at some point, if we continue on this exponential curve, we will reach a limit, and we need to know how to address that. And that's something that really needed to have been planned for earlier. And that's really, I think, the thrust of the PUC ruling that you talked about a month ago when it first came out.
Summarize the ruling.
Sure. Essentially, the PUC released, it was actually 3 rulings, I think, on April 28th. And they gave HECO 120 days to come up with 2 action plans regarding generation and, looking in my notes, generation and grid modernization. Okay. So they were basically calling them to task. It was a fairly scathing report.
Saying they hadn't moved fast enough.
Yeah, so it had come on, they had given them this directive a year ago. And
they told them to do this before?
Right, yeah. Okay. And then they called together, there was a working group of, I think, upwards of 50 people, everybody who had a stake in this process.
Was this the IRP process?
The RSWG, the working group.
The I want to be sure I'm talking about the IRP with the 50 people.
Yeah,
50 is the thing that triggered it for me.
Right, the working group which resulted in the IRP process.
Joe Ferraro and I talked about, what happens if you have 50 people designing a building. Never mind.
I think, and I wasn't, there's other people that could probably speak to it more authoritatively, but my impression is that it was an opportunity for everyone to, to troubleshoot issues, to offer their expertise, to offer feedback, and there was a structure. It was set up by which HECO was intended to incorporate that feedback and come up with something that was really representative of what all these 50 people had been able to contribute, and they failed to do that in the estimation of the PUC. And
this was the thing where Carl Friedman found that that the IRP report did not satisfy the original requirements of the order calling for the IRP.
Right.
And so he disqualified the report. So there was no report.
Right.
Didn't exist.
Have to go back to the drawing board.
Back to the drawing boards. And this recent order said back to the drawing boards.
Right, exactly.
You better do what we said. And
they gave them 120 days to do it.
120 days, which is actually 3 months.
Four. So
4
at
months.
this rate,
So
we're at the 1 month mark. So
you heard it here on Think Tank.
We've got 3 months to go from now. August 26th is their deadline.
Okay.
And I think it's really important because, in the work that we've done, I think, our work is balanced between the policy sector and just community advocacy and getting the word out and translating it to people that don't sit around and talk about the IRSWG process and the IRP all day long. And so integrated
resource planning.
Right.
Plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know, I have experience just sort of with a wide variety of feedback and voices and people expressing, you know, just their experience with utility from ratepayers to customers to people who've dealt with them at an institutional level. And I was hearing, you know, for months just so much frustration with, you know, what people perceive to be HECO's, you know, foot dragging and just not being consistent, you know, making a lot of promises and not being consistent with that.
I'm really outside of the box on this, but if the PUC says to HECO, he wants you to make sure to get community input on it,
Yeah.
and then HECO invites 50 people, I mean, and the magnitude of that is staggering. 50 people, you want everybody represented from the activists to the capital interest, everybody in the spectrum. How can you expect any kind of plan to come out of that? Is it all HECO's fault? Or maybe this was a flawed process to begin with?
Well, I think, and what I heard on your show earlier
that was authoritative.
that's the source. That's gospel right there. Is that, you know, it was a departure from the earlier process, but there was clearly a need for it.
Yeah.
The PUC saw a need. You know, business as usual wasn't working. It wasn't functioning, and I think that's the theme of this overall. Is that yes, there are a lot of uncertainties in the process moving forward. Nobody has the perfect roadmap. Nobody has all the solutions. But there is a very clear necessity to put aside business as usual and reevaluate and move forward proactively with a focus on solutions.
Okay, I mean, I think some people, I mean, I've heard that term before, scathing, in these orders, decisions and orders. And I've also heard some of our guests say that that's unfair. But be that as it may, you know, here we are, and the IRP process has really been terminated effectively by the history of it and the orders of the PUC. So now it sounds like the process is different, and it's like you over there, HECO, you know, give us a plan and give us a plan quickly, and let's catch up with where we wanted to be before, and exactly what are they supposed to do now?
Well, I think exactly, and the PUC gave, I think, 10 guidelines, you know, for deliverables that they were expecting, and that ranged anywhere from, you know, big concepts, transitioning business model, you know, shifting the paradigm stuff, to really particular directives. So what we focused in on are three things.
But wait, what are they supposed to do?
What are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
So they're supposed to meet those, come up with a plan, meet those address the large-scale, big-picture issues as well as the short-term steps for, you know, bringing more renewables online in the short term.
This is essentially another IRP, but more expedited.
But actually do it this time.
Actually, yeah. Well, maybe it'll help if they don't have to get out and play with 50 people every day. I mean, I know they had so many meetings and so many submissions and over years. And I said to myself when I first heard this, I said, how are you going to do this? I mean, it's very democratic, but boy, democracy doesn't always work. You know, if you maybe you put one person in charge and say, "Here, do it." Yeah.
Well, I think there's two. I mean, this is just my impressions from the outside, but you know, there's two different processes because I've been involved in a lot of collaborative work. And on the one hand, you have, you know, are you trying to create a document that literally everyone has to sign off on and everybody gets to edit, or are you just having a collaborative process where you solicit feedback and, you know, and then you go away and take that feedback and institute to the best of your ability. And my impression is
the buck stops
it was
here
the
kind
second.
of thing.
You know,
it was supposed to be the second way
of that. And so the criticism was simply that they did not sufficiently, they didn't sufficiently incorporate the feedback that was given, and I think that's a legitimate critique.
Okay, so going forward in this remaining, 90 days, they don't have to go out and do the same with the meetings and everything?
No, not to my understanding.
It's
I think it's an internal process.
Internal process.
Yeah.
And that process would modernize the grid.
It would come up with a plan to modernize the grid, yeah.
Tell us about your petition and how does that fit into the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, so we, you know, we really wanted to use this opportunity with the PUC deadline to drive accountability. You know, a lot of these processes go on behind the scenes, and it's just in this, you know, policy wonk universe that the everyday person doesn't really have access to. And so we wanted to take this deadline and really, you know, get it out there to all those people who are, you know, who have been frustrated over the last number of years, going back years on the neighbor islands, that people haven't been able to install rooftop solar, just as one example. And so we started a petition we kicked it off on Hands Across the Sand, which is a global day of action to move off of fossil fuel and towards clean energy. And we really, it's happening all around the world. It kicked off in 2010 after the BP oil spill, and it really galvanized a lot of people. And
what is this day?
Hands Across the Sand.
What day?
So we had 200 people come down to Ala Moana Beach Park.
Oh, it happened already?
It happened. It was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's when we started the petition. It was May 17th.
Cleaning up and was part of a bigger event? Or was it just for the petition?
Yeah, well, so the event was for Hands Across the Sand, and we had speeches and we had
it's a public awareness about the need to move.
Yeah, but the centerpiece of that event is everybody lining up on the beach and holding hands, and it's a symbolic of creating a symbolic barrier against spilled oil in the case of BP, and also for us it was about drawing a line in the sand and saying this we need change. Hawaii needs change. The status quo is not working anymore. We cannot remain reliant on fossil fuels. And so we took that opportunity to we would have done that anyway. We would have done that event anyway. But it coincided really nicely with this action item, this action that we were asking people to take.
What day was it again?
That was May 17th, and it marked
only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. It marked the 100th day, 100 days out from the deadline. So we called it the 100-day countdown to hold HECO accountable to clean up the grid. And we really wanted to put it in concrete terms like that. We talk about cleaning up the beach, and we really need to take this out of the realm of abstract policy and help people understand that there's an infrastructure going on all around you that undergirds everything we do, our whole impact on our environment, and that's our energy grid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to try to drill down into exactly how that translates to action in a minute. But first, I want to remind everybody who we're talking to.
Okay.
This is Caitlin Pomeranz. She's with the Sierra Club, and the lady at her left and my far left is Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. Today is Wednesday, and it's the State of Clean Energy today, and we're talking about modernizing our grid. We'll be right back in a moment. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Willow Chang Alion, and I host a show called The Art of Life. We air live every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. And what we do is basically we focus on individuals who create a unique sense of place for Hawaii. These are movers and shakers, artists, innovators. They are also traditionalists. They're all involved in the archival process, and they make this place a unique place, one that makes Hawaii a richer place to be. I hope you do join us, and certainly tell your friends about the show, whether they live here or they live abroad. It's a way to give back to our community. We're keeping it Pono.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here, we're still alive, we're still here. In our studio at the core of downtown. That's the Think Tech studio in Pioneer Plaza with Caitlin Pomeranz of the Sierra Club and Sharon Moriwaki, my co-host with Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And we're talking about a petition. And actually, the petition is still an open petition, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's going to be open from now until August 26th.
So if I sign the petition, what does it mean? What am I saying?
So we have the text here, but you can go to hawaii2futures.com. That's Hawaii 2 Futures, not Hawaii's 2 Futures.
2 futures, like
two
futures.
Yeah,
Oh.
2 TWO
Is this like
spelled
the
out.
ghost of Christmas past kind of thing? If you don't do it, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, I can talk about. There's an interesting story there. I can tell you that real quick, but yeah, go to hawaii2futures.com. There is a full letter that we've addressed to the PUC, basically, in support of the strong message that they sent to HECO and laying out, specifically what we would like to see come out, what we're looking for in this plan to make it effective.
Okay.
And so I encourage people to go there and sign. And that will be open from now until August 26th. And we're going to be continuing to keep up the drumbeat to hold HECO accountable to meet that deadline.
So this is all about HECO then?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, at this point, coming off of the PUC ruling, I think that's the appropriate place to focus energy. There's a lot of, there are a lot of components to a smart grid. There's a lot of people who can be effective in innovation and in affecting policy.
Well,
but
I
at
wanted
this
to
point
ask
right
you that.
Now,
I think it's important that we get some ideas about exactly what the Sierra Club or anyone involved in this conversation wants. I mean, for
Yeah.
example, if you ask me, you say, Jay, would you sign the J. Fidel petition? You know what my petition would be? Get storage,
Right.
laddies. Get
Yeah.
storage. And find a way to charge the cost of the storage equitably to the
Right.
people who are benefiting by the storage. I mean, there's a question, for example, about whether storage should be incentivized at the homeowner level or at the commercial installation level or at the utility level. Question about whether we should have big PV farms that run like, generator facilities. And I would say, well, let me know about storage, because I think storage is a solution.
Right.
And all this problem, I personally believe, and you can disagree. In fact, I urge you to disagree. All this problem with the PUC and interconnect and all that, it's because we don't have storage. If we had storage, we had a way to deal with the oversupply back on net energy metering, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. There wouldn't be a petition. There wouldn't be a march at the beach. You'd have to find another issue.
Gonna go hiking.
Well, there's plenty of other issues, so I would have no problem.
I
with
know
that.
you would.
But I think that's a
So
really
what
good
does your
point.
petition say specifically in
Yeah.
terms of what are you urging people to,
Well,
to tell the PUC?
Yeah, I mean, we really did take it, took the inspiration from the PUC order, and we're just trying to reinforce that. There's a lot we could say in addition to that, but in the petition in its current form, we're really highlighting the need to implement technical fixes to increase renewable penetration. That's, I think, the immediate issue.
It's all about penetration. It's
Sure,
all about
yeah.
interconnection.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the immediate issue that's
So,
staring us in the face right now.
You're demanding technological fixes to that? What exactly is it that you want?
Well, so yeah, I think what we need to know, we need to have a comprehensive analysis of, what are some of the technological fixes, whether it's storage or, whether it's changes on the forgetting all my technical words, whether it's changes at the inverter level, to smart inverters, or whatever's preventing
Whatever is preventing the connection, yeah?
Right, sure. We need to have a comprehensive evaluation of what that is, what the costs associated with that are, and there is. I think this is, there's been so much discussion around this that's just kind of gone in circles.
So you want them, the utility.
I think that's their.
I guess the PUC wants that too.
Yeah, and I think that's their. Everybody plays a different role, but they're really the only ones who can evaluate, the equipment that they currently have, the capacity of that equipment, what else is on the market, what's available, how much it costs, and we need to see that.
Well, has anybody? I mean, it's kind of interesting to say, you find the equipment, and they may be in a better position, honestly, than anyone else to find it. But if I went on Google right now, power is in Google.
Right.
If I on Google right now, and I could look up some of these new equipment, I could check into new companies, American companies or overseas, to find what they got, and then I could call them up. I can educate myself in no time at all.
Right.
And I could have them tell me, because everybody knows what we're wearing in our coat sleeve out here,
Right.
tell me what they think we should do, and then I could put that in a petition.
Yeah.
Why don't you get the XYZ inverter box?
Well, I think we don't want to put ourselves. I mean, that's interesting, and that's definitely something we've considered. But I don't think we want to put ourselves in the position of, telling the utility what kind of equipment they need to make their grid functional. I think that's their responsibility to know what kind of equipment, I
just say they're in a good position to know that, a better position.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But I do want to make one thing clear, which is that this is, I think, at this juncture, focused on HECO because there's been this ruling calling them to come up with this very specific deliverable by a very specific date, and it's an opportunity to raise awareness about that. But in the long run, change is happening no matter what. It doesn't depend on them coming up with a plan in order for change to occur, in order for us to transition to a clean energy future.
But let's assume that it fails.
Sure.
That your petition, it's signed, everybody agrees, and everybody is on the same page about that. But nothing happens. Let's assume. I mean,
Right.
I don't think it's a likely assumption, but it's a possibility. Nothing happens. Okay.
Yeah.
You say that change is happening anyway. How?
Absolutely. It's happening by the effect of market forces, inexorable market forces. And we've seen that already. That's why we're in the position we're in right now, is that solar, rooftop solar became cheaper. If you think about it just in terms of any other corporation that has a service to perform, they're providing a certain product, fossil fuel fired electricity. And another product has come on the market, which is cheaper. So everybody's, taking advantage of that. And they're put in a position where they have to compete with that. And so it's going to continue as, like you pointed out with battery storage. People are frustrated right now because there's a product out there that they want and they can't take advantage of it because they're dependent on the utility.
They could spend $15,000 or so
Right.
to get their own battery right in the garage.
Yeah, so we've reached the point with PV and batteries now where we were at with PV, 20 years ago, where there was a high upfront cost. But it's very likely, within the next, I would say maximum 5 years. Actually, I take that back.
3 years.
We've already reached
storage
the point where solar PV and battery backup is cost competitive in the long run with conventional electricity rates in Hawaii. We've already reached that point. So
assuming, well, you're assuming that the cost of fuel will remain a certain constant.
Well,
or are you
it's not
assuming
constant.
it continues
It's
to go
going
up?
There's a really interesting, if I can find it in my mess of papers here, there's a really interesting graph from the Rocky Mountain Institute, which essentially shows for various areas, Hawaii as well as, I don't know if you can see this on TV.
Well, we can see that. Marshall, can you, zoom in a little?
Zoom in here.
We can get all the detail of it. Okay.
If people are having a hard time seeing it, you can Google Rocky Mountain Institute. Trying to remember the economics of grid defection. So right here, this shows our electricity rate over, I think it's over the next until 2050.
Yeah.
And so we've already reached parity with battery backups. And they're estimating that New York will reach it in 2025, California will reach it in 2031. So what happens when that happens is the same exponential, okay, we're good.
Okay, we're good. We've seen enough of that.
The same exponential adoption, but in this case, that means people fleeing from the grid. And what that does, it creates, a potentially unstable situation
when they flee from the grid, it's unstable.
Yeah, you're leaving.
So you're not advocating for that.
I'm not. I think a lot of our advocacy has been to try, basically to save eco from itself. So we're not seeing them as the enemy here. The attention that we're trying to focus on this process isn't trying to, give them grief for the sake of giving them grief. It's really because there's a need to transform, to stay relevant, and we believe that helping them, incentivizing them, agitating for them to transform is what needs to happen in order for us to create a grid which can distribute the benefits of renewable energy to everybody, whether they live in a condo, whether they live.
We are them and they are us.
We're
really all
part
together and part of the
same community, and it comes home much more. Comes home much easier when you live on a small island.
Caitlin, if we had more time, and we were all still willing to broadcast for the next 2 weeks or so, I'm sure we could come up with a solution. For example, we could decide whether, farms are, PV farms are better than residential, or to what extent, and to what extent we want incentives for those or residential.
Yeah.
We could talk about energy metering, which may be a little in need of tuning, at least, because you wind up getting too much money, in my view, back from utility when you sell. And we could talk about new technology like the little box that goes, it was the original smart grid idea. A little box goes on your house, and when you're about to sell your PV back to the utility, it takes a check on things. And if the utility, under whatever negotiated, paradigm is involved, whatever programming is involved, the message comes, oh, we can't take any more right now. We can negotiate that. Okay, it stops. Now, the result there is that the fellow who owns the house, he gets his PV, he's happy. During the day, if he wants to get battery, he'll have it at night. If he wants to sell back, he can only sell back when the grid wants to take it. Okay, and in this way, we could make everyone, at least everyone, who wants to buy into the notion of a common problem and a common solution, we could make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Why don't we just do something like
Well,
that?
see, I think to me, that's part of the crux of the issue, is that the solutions are out there, and there are other countries, other states that are ahead of us in terms of, evaluating and implementing, whether it's storage or other grid modernization policies and technology. And it really, it comes down to, I think for me it comes back to people power. The only thing, like, we can sit here and talk about it, but we really need we need the people who are in positions of power and influence to be incentivized to do that. And we've tried to create financial incentives, and in some ways they, that's, I think, still under review by the PUC, but I think the growing consensus is they haven't worked. And so then, you try to create another incentive, which is public pressure and public awareness. And it just comes home to me so often in all the work that I do, how much it really comes down to, personality. At the end of the day, the technology is there. It's whether we're able to really, my best guess is that the reason, the incentives haven't worked until now is because whoever's in a position of making decisions about this is more afraid of change than they are seeking those financial incentives.
Why is that? This is really a core question.
Yeah.
Hawaii, the land of consensus where nobody can actually reach consensus. Hawaii, the land of consensus where it does seem you reach consensus, you never actually make a consensus on doing anything.
Right.
So we have, eternal gab fest. And I submit to you, and I would like your reaction to this, is that one of the reasons nobody on the landscape wants to step forward and say, no, this is the way we do it. We get this kind of equipment, and we put it over here, and we have this percentage of that, and that percentage of this, and we are going to go, because if you did that, what would happen? You'd be criticized, no matter how good it was.
I think that's very astute, and I think there's maybe a necessity to get a slightly tougher skin, with everybody involved. But I think there's a real reason that happens, and so to give a full picture. We live in, our ecosystem is very fragile, and our social ecosystem is very fragile. And
you heard it here on Think Tank. Words of wisdom.
So I think that is a reality. I've done a lot of work on Maui as well, and it's even more the case there. And I was talking to a county council member who was and we were just commiserating about the difficulties of moving to clean energy, and recently the mayor had called out MECO for dumping wind energy, and I said I used that as an example of technical problems, and he said no, that's not a technical problem, that's personality. There's personality conflict, and somebody does whatever's going on, and so somebody just, and I don't know if that's a reality, but I think
you got to take it. You got to take it with some credibility,
right.
there.
Yeah, and so I just really think I think we have to recognize that maybe there's a value to making that more transparent. Being able to look at step back a little bit and look at ourselves critically, and understand. Yeah, okay, there's social pressures here. It's a small community. Nobody wants to be alienated. You want to be taken seriously. You want to be able to get to the table to contribute your ideas. But let's have some perspective on that and choose our moments to really speak forcefully when the situation warrants it. And
I love this process. You're right. I think in terms of the transformation. Sharon and I have been talking about transformation for since 2008 anyway. And so we're in this transformation, and we're waiting to grab something, but it's hard to do that. And every time you think you're on a track, like we all thought we were having this miraculous experience with photovoltaic. But then something happens to get you off the track, whether it's interconnect problem or a problem. Wait and see. We're going to have a problem with the duties, and the Chinese are going to. They manufacture most or all of the PV now. That's going to be an issue on that. Energy is going to be in more competition in the world. So is PV, because PV is energy, right? And so, I mean, how do we stay on a track? How do we get where we need to go without getting distracted all the time? And what happened to wind? We loved wind. I saw those wind turbines as ballet dancers. I could hear them.
Yeah.
What happened?
I mean, it's not going to go away. You know, I think one of the most compelling things about clean energy is that you're never going to move backwards in terms of your technology and whatever steps you've taken to adopt that. And so yeah, things are going to move at different speeds. But
that's true.
Yeah.
And then of course, I'll plant it right in the middle of the table, right here. I'll plant the LNG issue right there. Now, LNG is cheaper, for sure. Oh, you can say it's not that much cheaper, but in general.
Is it going to be cheaper in another decade? You know, like I think one of the issues with LNG is that we're potentially locking ourselves into a contract, definitely locking ourselves into some very expensive infrastructure, which is, whatever which we may and will likely see the technology and the prices of actual clean energy come down before we're able to pay that off. And I have another, I don't know if I'll hold this up because it isn't as pretty, but I can describe it, another visual aid, which just shows, it shows the range of countries in which solar and wind are already cost competitive with fossil fuel. And, it's amazing. I'm continually amazed in my job. All the progress, that's happening in leaps and bounds. I mean, just a quick sample: Mexico, Chile, Spain, Egypt, Iran, China, Burma, Japan, Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. It doesn't list the U.S., but I know of particular, in certain states it's happening already. In Colorado and Arizona and Texas, utilities have turned down coal and gas-fired plants in favor of solar and wind. And so I think it bears some pause is due before we rush into this.
Oh, sure. The conversation, we should continue the conversation for sure. But one thing that strikes me, about photovoltaic, is that at the essence of it, photovoltaic. I forgot my point. Photovoltaic is just one of many, and photovoltaic is going to require, this is the point of the show, it's going to require upgrade to the grid, modernization, if you will.
Yeah.
And people have forgotten that modernization costs beaucoup bucks, buku bucks even, hundreds of millions, billions, all that.
Yeah.
And somebody actually has to pay it. There isn't, some kind of solar person who comes down and says, "Don't worry about a thing, boys. I'll write a check." No. And who is going to pay it? And that, at the end of the day, I really submit that people would be able to come together. They'll make an IRP.
Yeah.
The IRP will be largely about photovoltaic.
Yeah.
But the unanswered question is, who pays for the equipment that is ultimately going to be recommended and used to modernize the grid to accept all the photovoltaic? Does the taxpayer pay? That is everyone. Does the ratepayer pay? Do only the guys who have photovoltaic on their roof, do they pay? Who pays? And who determines who pays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's premature in the sense that we need to know what the costs are first, and we need to know what we're paying for and who that benefits before
Why can't you determine that in advance?
Well, you can.
If you did determine it, then you could at least get people to buy into it.
Yeah.
And maybe you could actually govern policy with who is going to write the check. Going forward, it probably, I don't know, it's hard to decide this because nobody wants to pay something that he doesn't have to pay.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying, "No, not me." The other guy, "Not me."
Yeah, but the biggest, I think, to me, the biggest sticking point about the cost question is people always, often bring it up with sort of an assumption that it's optional. You know, upgrading our grid is optional, but the alternative is staying, you know, continuing to have a grid that's dependent on fossil fuels and to continue to pay these rates, which we already saw are going up like that, you know. And so do we want to be here still paying these rates and throwing our money away, or do we want to, you know, pay more over this next period, you know, whether that's everybody who contributes because we've determined that this is this is ultimately going to have a payoff for everyone, which I believe it will, or whether, you know, however we spread that around, do we want to make that investment up front and then see rates decline over a period of time? And to me, that's just common sense, and I think it's common sense for the majority of people.
What's the common sense?
That a smart investment in infrastructure, which is going to allow our grid to incorporate more renewable sources, not just solar PV, but, you know, technologies we don't even have yet.
Yeah, but you're getting to the core. I mean, to the point we organized a show around modernizing the grid. I mean, I think everyone agrees we should use clean energy instead of the other kind.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone agrees that photovoltaic is a leader in this. At least for now, at least, you know, while we can get the panels. I hope we can still get the panels. And I hope the panels last as long as they're supposed to last. But at least for now, building out, you know, requires photovoltaic. And photovoltaic in turn requires, at least at some point, you know, you have to have making peace with the utility, you know, because you can't just keep on feeding it into the utility until everything goes, you know, erupts. So that requires equipment too. At the end of the day, it comes back to we need equipment. We need the best equipment we can get in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
And we want it to happen, but we got to figure out a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think the longer we kick that can down the road, the longer this conversation will go without a resolution.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Who should pay for it?
I don't, you know, I think there needs to be, like in the grid modernization bill that was passed, I believe the language was, you know, to evaluate, to spread the costs out among, you know, the beneficiaries. And that's a whole discussion about who benefits. You know, just, I don't think it makes sense personally to lay the full cost on the people who just happened to be caught at the time when their circuit reached 100% saturation. That makes no sense to me, because that's, you know, de-incentivizing people. You're basically creating a bottleneck which nobody is going to be able to push through. And the other thing, you know, the other sort of trope that I think we need to tear down is this idea that we're only talking about upgrading the grid for this certain number of people who are stuck in this process right now and want their solar panels. That's just not the reality. That's an arbitrary group of people created by an arbitrary deadline, when the reality is that 94% of Hawaii residents want to see more, you know, growth in rooftop solar. Everybody is envisioning that at some point rooftop solar could be in their future. And so it's not, you know, and that's a reality, you know. With community solar initiatives, with on-bill financing, solar is becoming increasingly available to low-income people, to renters, to people in condos.
Am I missing something? Sharon and I went through Lanai, and in Lanai they didn't want wind over there, and at the time it was a big, full-scale debate going on, and we talked and we got sound from one young high school senior, I guess she was, or maybe a junior, and we said, you know, what do you want to do? And she said, oh, photovoltaic on every roof. We want it everywhere. I said, well, in the absence of storage, what are you going to do at night? Because you won't have any power if you have PV everywhere. And her answer was, this is Lanai. We'll go to sleep early. Never forget that.
Yeah.
So if we want this thing to work like swell, we are going to have to get storage.
Yeah.
When we get storage, we can retire the diesel, you know.
Sure. Well,
not until
storage is there. And other states are implementing it. And, you know, it's...
I mean,
Still costly,
overnight?
though. That's the part. The technology has to really be enhanced for the cost to come down.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
I suppose you're right. You can get storage now, but it would be really expensive to run it overnight and make sure everybody had what they have now using diesel at night. Okay, but let's take a moment for the summary. We always have the summary at the end. Put the heat on, Sharon. So Sharon, You have a minute or two to summarize for everybody? What
Oh,
do you
boy.
think?
Yeah, boy is right. Well, I think what the Sierra Club is doing and getting people much more involved and know what's happening with grid modernization, what that is, and working with the utility, because I think a lot of people just say, oh, the utility should handle it, but explaining it a lot more and what it means and that it does cost and where does it come from. So I think part of the importance of what you're doing is really educating the public and getting them much more involved in talking about just not the high rates, but why are the rates high and what can we do about it. So
Yeah.
keep on the good work.
Thank you.
Keep on with your petition, and hopefully you can make some changes in the long run.
Can you come back and talk to us after that 120-day period has
Yeah.
run?
Yeah.
I'd like to see what happens.
August
Really curious.
26th. So stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll be able to get out there in a bigger way and really keep bringing this, educating people about this issue and what they can do.
I want a
In fact,
solution.
I just want to say that the Clean Energy Day, one
Yeah.
of the big
Oh,
goals
of course.
is the grid modernization, renewable energies on the grid,
Mm-hmm.
as well as looking at transportation and the electrical sector.
Yeah.
So a lot of the discussion will be looking at the utility of the future. What can we do? Where do people sit? The consumers sit. In that.
Sharon, that's camera 2
July
over there. That's camera
22nd.
2.
Okay.
That's your camera. And if you don't mind, could you please make a pitch for Hawaii Clean
Yes,
Energy
please.
Day? Tell them
Everybody.
where, when,
It
the
will
old
be
journalistic questions.
July 22nd, it's a Tuesday, and it will be from 9 o'clock in the morning to 6 p.m. We will be covering where clean energy is, what's happening, what's not, especially what's not and what we can do about it. It's going to be looking at grid modernization, renewable energy, as well as transportation and what's happening and what's not. It'll be a great event. We hope everybody will come. It will be at the YWCA downtown where it usually is. So please attend. We're still working on the details of the program, but in the next week or two, it will be in the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum website, HEPF, Hawaii Energy Policy at hawaii.edu.
Yeah, thank you,
Please
Sharon.
attend.
Thanpe you, Caitlin. It's great to have you come down here.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a great discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
We have to
Yes, good,
continue it.
thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
That's Caitlin Pomerantz, the Sierra Club, and Sharon Moriwaki, my co-host here on Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We're talking about modernizing our grid, which is really a critical question. And we will solve that question. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha.